Learning Unplugged, Learning Unplugged, Learning Unplugged, Learning Unplugged. Woo!
1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Learning Unplugged.
Ooh.
Very exciting. Today we're going to compare our education around the world. So we'll revisit this series with people who have had their education in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had my education in England.
I've had it in Singapore.
So we're going to have a little chat and compare.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Should we introduce ourselves first?
Yes, good idea.
So,
I'm Natalie, I'm the Office Manager for Greenhouse Learning.
and I'm Arfynna. I'm the Business Development Executive of Greenhouse Learning.
Very fancy. So, should we dive straight in?
Let's go. So, I guess where should we start? Should we start with
Primary school.
primary school's a good start, yeah?
So, my primary school experience was very chill, to say the least.
In what sense?
I don't remember there being much past reading and writing and your very basic arithmetic.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a big divide between people who had had the privilege of having their parents teach them prior to primary school,
Yeah.
and then another half of people who, sadly had waited for education to be taught that. I think there was a big split of some people who were very bored and some people who found it really difficult.
Because there's no extra support there.
No extra support.
I feel like that's pretty universal around
Yeah.
the world. When you don't have the support of parents or money, to help with sort of furthering your education when you need it. I think in terms of my primary school education as well, I wouldn't say it was exactly relaxed. I think in Singapore it's very much really intense as soon as you hit primary school. So I remember just having to revise every day for my
Really? In primary school?
primary school, yes. And I think it was made worse by the fact that it was very, very competitive. So even in primary school they had sort of a division of abilities, which I'm sure was meant to be a good
Sets?
yeah, like sets, which I'm sure was meant to be a good thing, but I think what ended up happening was it just sort of made people feel really bad about themselves instead if they didn't make it to the top set. It wasn't good for self-esteem and things like that. I'm sure things have changed now, hopefully, but I think Singapore, I have had the experience of being in a British environment like school as well, in uni. I would say the main difference I felt is that in the UK it's a lot more critical thinking, a lot more independent thought, whereas
That's interesting, yeah.
whereas that's very much encouraged, whereas in Singapore it's very much you gotta get the answers that we want. If you don't have it, you're out.
And more memory based,
Very, very memory based. Not trying to say bad things about it, but I think it has pros and cons to both, basically. In terms of education, but
what about the kind of duality of being a child with that? Because even when we had, obviously every teacher teaches very differently. So of course there's strict teachers in England. And of course, schools that are different to mine, which was a very small town school with not a lot of pupils, I'm sure were a lot stricter than mine. But we very much were in primary school allowed to be children. We had lots of play times. We had lots of, very childish games. We were very much allowed to scream and run around and things like that. What was that kind of like for you?
Well, that's very exciting, your primary school, that you could be a child. To be honest, when I was in primary school, I don't even remember having the ability to be like a child. I feel like it was very much so, get this thing done, you need to be taught something by a certain time. So you could tell the teachers were very pressured as well. But I think also it's because of the role that parents play in Singapore. I think there are a lot more, more heavily involved parents who are a lot more stricter with the teachers and the way they want teachers to
the expectations of teachers.
Exactly. I think it's a lot higher in Singapore, only because of the culture of education there. Education is a top thing that everyone sort of goes into and thinks about ever since you're born. So when we talk about being a child in Singapore, I think hopefully it's better now, but I remember when I was younger, I didn't have much time to like sort of play around with my friends. Because we always had lots of homework, lots of like extra classes even in primary school, which to think about is quite sad, because obviously that age you're supposed to be enjoying life, having fun with your friends, but yeah.
So obviously now you're 25.
Yeah.
And a very accomplished woman.
Oh, thank
If
you.
I do say so myself.
Sitting next to a very accomplished woman myself.
Do you think you would be as accomplished of a young woman if you hadn't been pushed as much as you are?
Oh, this is going to be pretty, not controversial, but I must say, I think I am who I am today because of my university experience in the UK. So
interesting.
So I think if I went to a Singaporean university, I would be I would have a very different mindset towards life and towards the kind of work that I'm participating in. I think the reason I'm here today is because one thing that uni has taught me in the UK is to very much think for yourself and go down the path that you want to go down, not so much like following the path that is set out by society. So I think I'm where I am today because I know it's going to be controversial. I must say that the good thing about Singapore is that it's made me very, very much a very organized person because I've had to be. I would say I'm very detail oriented, and that's something that Singapore school has taught me, because you have to be detail oriented and very much a big planner when it comes to things. So I would say that has helped me accomplish my goals, but I am very much where I am today because of the mindset that UK university has taught me. How about you then? In terms of, coming from a small town.
Very small,
very small. What are the differences would you say that you've seen, like being in a small environment and then suddenly going to like uni where it's obviously a lot bigger and a lot...
It was massive change actually. I mean, I moved from a small town just outside of Basingstoke I went to Bath University, and the population of my hometown is about, when I was growing up, about 20,000.
Wow.
Bath is 200,000. And now that I live in Bristol, it's hilarious to me that I thought of Bath as a big city. Because, I remember my sort of first day going around, and I just went for a trip and thought this is a beautiful city, maybe I could go to uni here. But what's really interesting is that having compared myself now to people I've met in Bath, in Bristol, the things that I don't think was ever kind of taught to us in school were the absolute realm of possibilities of jobs.
Oh, wow.
So you were taught, you can be an artist, a musician, a footballer, all the classic jobs, lawyer, all these things. I don't think anyone said like, oh, would you like to be on the radio? This is how you do it. Would you like? There was no sort of like aspirational goals. It was very much like, these are goals that are not going to happen, such as footballer and musician. These are goals that are doable. And the doable goals were
they like pushed into you?
Teaching and things like that. And it also puts a negative spin around these doable goals because it makes it feel like a backup plan. Whereas, for me now, as someone who tutors, it's not at all a backup plan. It's something I love to do.
Yeah.
I think they didn't sort of expect your life to pass the town. There was no if you want to be this, the opportunity is there in London, in Bristol, in Manchester. There was nothing like that. It was very much like, these are the opportunities for you here.
So what you can do.
And what you can do here.
So sort of like not encouraging you to dare to dream, sort of.
Exactly. And I think realism is really important, but I think maybe a little bit too young. It was like, these are your options. And I think
limiting.
Very limiting. And I think now I love to tell young people every opportunity I can that no matter, pick your field and then look at the 300 jobs in that field.
That's true, actually.
Maybe you want to be a famous actor. Maybe that's not a realistic goal. Why not be a runner on a film set? That's not an unrealistic goal. There's this wealth of jobs, and I just
within something.
And I just had no idea. I had no idea.
True, actually, that you brought it up. That's a very good point. I think the environment that we grew up in and that we surround ourselves by very much like defines
Yeah.
how much we dare to dream. And I think that's a very good thing that you brought up. Like, obviously coming from a small town, you had limited opportunities as opposed to like when you went to Bath and Bristol. So, wow, that's very interesting.
I know obviously they always have like job fairs and things like that, but I
Did you think it helped you at all?
I remember there being about 5 or 6 stalls, honestly, and it was like local businesses and local things. It was all very local, and I, you know, again, it's a privilege to be able to go to university. It's a privilege to be able to move out from your hometown and things like this. But I think there is a world out there that should not be forgotten just because it's not within your immediate kind of vision, you know.
That's true. That's very true.
And it's the same thing with like GCSEs and things like that. You know, the common question asked by all kids, isn't it? You sit in school and you go, "Miss, why do I need to learn this?" And I always thought that their answers, you know, their answers were okay. But now I think like I actually would be able to answer that.
Yeah.
I'd say,
what's an example?
So, for example, you know, maths. Why am I learning algebra? Yeah. Because the obvious thing is that, you know, 20 years you're probably not going to be using algebra again unless you're a mathematician. But you could say, you know, oh, well, we're learning how to follow a set of instructions, complete that set of instructions. We're learning that just because the initial rule changes doesn't mean that your application changes any single time. You know, all these different skills that you learn, the skill doesn't have to be maths.
Yeah,
the skill
it's very applicable everywhere else.
And like you say about critical thinking, English, it's like, when am I going to analyse a book ever again?
Yeah.
Maybe you won't, but you'll be able to then read a book and appreciate a passage for the rest of your life.
But just like boring things, like when you're looking at insurance as an adult, that's why you have to critical think. Like, what matters to you? What do you want to become? And things like that. Or when you're finding a job that you like, for example.
Oh, writing CVs is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, critical thinking is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. So now that we've talked about school environment, how about let's talk about something a bit more exciting. What do you think about students? What the difference between, let's say, British students, important students?
I think in my day.
In your day.
So I started secondary school 13 years ago. So this is we've got a generational gap here, but the thing was being cool. I think the main difference I've seen now as a tutor is that caring about things now isn't as uncool as it used to be.
That's true. That's true.
When I was a teenager, if you showed yourself, you know, trying or having hobbies or interests like other than sport, you were uncool. You had to secretly like Lord of the Rings. You had to secretly write little short stories in a notebook. Like, you know, don't look.
Were you one of those people?
I was all of those people. and the thing is, everyone is. They've all got something that they're kind of a secret passion they don't want to. And I think now, having taught, you know, one of my students is like 16, doing GCSE maths. They have interests and they have revision buddies and they all talk about how they want to get good grades. Yeah. And it's not this kind of uncool thing anymore.
It's cool to care, basically.
It's cool to care. And I love that. I think it's
so
amazing.
Much better, I think. Rather than like pretending to be somebody you're not. I think this generation is a lot better accepting. A lot more accepting it. Like being able to just like the things you like.
Yeah, definitely. What about you?
In Singapore, it was opposite, I would say.
Complete opposite?
Not in the sense that it was cool and uncool, but I think it was very much cool if you were smart. Very cool if you were in the top class, or if you had all the grades, and you'd be considered uncool if you were people like me who were struggling in school and not doing well. I think that was very much, at least what I interpreted in terms of students, because again, society has these values that it plays onto you, and if society says it's cool to be smart in school, naturally students will think it's cool to be smart. On top of that, I think we very much were not allowed to explore sort of interest outside of things that were established in school.
In academia,
so like you were talking about Lord of the Rings, or like even if you wanted to sing and be a musician, those things are very much restricted to what you can do in school. So even singing, you're not allowed to like, there weren't much like, oh, let's form a band.
It's like classical singing.
Exactly, very much like by the book. So I would say that's what Singaporean students are like.
It's really interesting because I don't know how differently I would have ended up if that had been the opposite, because I've had phases in school of trying really, really hard in academic and not trying at all, and I think my grades weren't that different either kind of way, because I think that caring is the main thing.
No, definitely.
Caring about your grade and putting the effort in.
Yeah.
You know, I think anyone can open a book and read it.
Yeah.
But if you're actually passionate about what you're doing. So now as an adult that I've become passionate about learning, I now can sit and, you know, learn music,
anything you want,
anything I want, and really be passionate about it, and it all goes in.
Yeah.
So I don't think I would have necessarily benefited more if it had been cool
To be.
I mean, obviously the ideal would be that everyone's different versions of intelligence were as heralded as everyone else, but one can only dream.
I think it'll take a long time.
I think it is getting there to an extent.
Oh, that's a very interesting point that you raised about like you thinking that you might not have really benefited, even though. But I think
grass is greener, isn't it? You know, you never really know how you're going to respond to society. You know, telling you what to do.
Exactly.
Essentially.
And I think the point about caring as well is a huge thing, because I think the reason it's a lot easier as adults to like learn some things because we are choosing to learn it. Whereas in school, even if you didn't like history, for example, you couldn't choose not to do it. You had to. So I think that's a really good point that you said.
I mean, it's funny because I mean, what I tutor now is maths, and I in school literally had no interest in maths up until year 10, and I just loved my maths teacher. He was amazing. He did the top set of maths, which I was lucky enough to be in, and pushed them all from, you know, good grades to the best grades, you know, A stars and things. He also taught the bottom set of people who were predicted failing grades. And something, I'm making this up a little bit, but something like 80-90% of the class ended up getting a passing grade because of his teaching. He was really amazing. And because of him and how much he was just good. He was just really good. He didn't
was like genuine about.
He was just genuine. He just loved maths, but he also loved teaching, and it really showed. He didn't, you know, it wasn't that he was nicer than anyone else. It wasn't that he was stricter than anyone else. He just cared so much. And you could just see it. And so it meant that I did brilliantly in maths because of him. You know, and there's, you know, not at all to bash any other teachers at all. But I think, you know, he made me passionate about it.
That's so
and having that connection to a teacher, which I think the whole class did.
Honestly, that's important.
So important,
On the topic of teachers then, shall we like dive into how different then, like how
we treat teachers,
and how we sort of, what's our relationship with teachers like in UK schools and Singapore schools, for example.
So my maths teacher was the only teacher I was nice to. No, I think the
your maths teacher looking at this and like, I feel special.
Yeah, shout out to Mr. Weaver. No, I think, you know, it goes with the being, you know, it's cool to not care. I think it was cool to be mean to your teachers. And it's really sad because now I look back and I'm like, these were such lovely people who were, you know, trying their best with not enough hours in the week and way too many horrible little teenagers. And there's something to be said for, you know, a teacher that's, you know, brilliant, being able to sort of control a class and things like that, but I wouldn't be able to do it now.
I mean, they shouldn't have to be brilliant.
No, they shouldn't have. I know.
But yeah, that's very...
But yeah, we weren't, there was a lot of pranks. There was a lot of, you know, chatting back. We did not in any way kind of respect them as an authoritative figure. But I think also, as part of the generation where you don't really respect your parents as an authoritative figure. You know, you see them as your parents, you love them, they love you, you know, etc., etc. But there's not many people I know that fear their parents. And I think if you really respect someone, you fear them a little bit, don't you? You kind of have that like...
I wouldn't say fear, I would say it's more you care a lot about what, like, their expectations of you.
Yes, I think we were also obsessed with this idea of rebellion. That it was like any opportunity to rebel, you kind of all took it. Even the people, the sort of goody two shoes in the class. they would knuckle down with their homework and things like that. But if someone was, jesting around with the teacher, they'd love it. They'd join in. And it's, it's
I would
very
absolutely have been bullied. Absolutely. I was such a I don't know, always in my books, trying to do work and stuff.
Yeah. No, people were, and I mean, my school wasn't too bad with bullying, to be fair. It seemed like everyone, I think it was almost the opposite in that it was so cliquey that everyone kind of left each other's cliques alone.
Wow, okay.
But yeah, it was we definitely were not nice to our teachers. And if I could go back in time, I think all of us would decide to be a bit nicer.
Aww.
How were you guys with your teachers?
Again, very opposite.
Yeah.
We had massive respect for our teachers. I think.
As you should. As you should. Yeah.
I think because we recognised that they work really hard to sort of help us wherever we can. But I also think because the role of teachers in Singapore is a lot more involved in the sense that they really go the extra mile outside of the classroom, outside of school, to make sure that you're getting the support that you need.
Yeah.
So I mean, this ties a little bit into work-life balance, I guess, and not much of a thing in Singapore, but teachers would have, for example, a group of the students, a WhatsApp group of the students, and you'd be able to just ask them any question that you had
out of school hours,
even at the weekend. And there's lots of a lot of my teachers as well, especially if you're struggling, they would hold their extra lessons for you, even though they didn't need to. So even if school ended at 5, they would stay till 7, just so just for these 3 students that need help.
Which is amazing, but
It
then
is.
also they deserve anything.
I mean, to be honest, they work. I feel like teachers, not to say that in the UK they don't work hard, because I think teachers everywhere work hard. But I think in Singapore, I mean, I might be biased because my mom's a teacher, but teachers definitely, I think we really respect, because it was in fact really cool if you were really buddy with the teachers.
Oh,
if
really?
If the teachers liked
So
you.
teacher's pet wasn't a thing at all?
It was cool if you were a teacher's pet.
Really?
It was cool if you could have banter with the teacher in a nice way outside of the classroom. I mean, obviously teachers' pets, people still had that oh my god, you're trying too hard.
Yeah.
But if you could balance that between not trying too hard but also being favored by your teacher, you were very much a cool student, and
that's so interesting.
yeah, and I think that's why it was also we respected our teachers, because not only are they helping us a lot, but also because of that status of I don't know, can't remember my teacher's name, but let's say Amy, Mrs. Amy Miss Amy was really cool to me.
Yeah.
We had some banter and everyone oh my god,
Yeah.
getting along with Miss Amy.
You're so cool.
You're so cool, yeah. So
we definitely had that in A levels, I think. We had, I think, so for me, I didn't have a sixth form. There was no sixth forms in my town. So there was one college, and pretty much everyone from the 2 secondary schools in the town and surrounding all went to this one college.
yeah.
So it was a lot of kids, more kids than you'd ever been near. And I think having separate buildings and a whole new, very much wasn't just this is my school classmates. It was a whole new wealth of people. That jump from being a teenager to sort of a young adult was massive. Not in a bad way, but that's when everyone started being I've chosen my subjects. I get to choose. You get to call teachers by their first names.
It's like buddy.
Yeah, you don't have a uniform. That was
so cool. No uniform.
It was
Wow.
And it was suddenly cool to try. Because you've chosen the subject, you're passionate about it, you have to assume. This was also before it was the legal age for leaving school had changed. So everyone who went to sixth form / everyone who went to my college had chosen to be there. And, working hard was okay. And
you became cool
suddenly.
Oh wow.
And everyone respected the teachers, everyone was nice to them. If someone had said anything rude to a teacher, I think the rest of the class would have been why are you being so rude? You're 16 now, you need to be nice. Grow up. Exactly.
I think maybe because you guys matured as well. Once you passed 16.
Yeah, but I think it's that change of school. I think if you were 15 and you'd done that change, I think it would have happened anyway. I think it's this is my childish school, this is my adult school. Yeah. And we all saw it very separately like that.
Oh, okay. It's very interesting. The
Did you
development.
separate as well? Did you have a whole school up to
Yeah, so
18?
primary and secondary different. Secondary and college different. And then obviously college. College is like our sixth form.
Yeah.
And then college and university different. So we separated every time. So yeah.
Did you see much of a difference with your secondary and your college, or?
I mean, college was very much more independent learning, so teachers were not as involved. But very much still hardworking teachers. Like even during the holidays, they would have extra classes because that's the time, like sixth form is the time you take your A-levels. So teachers will be holding classes even during the holidays, which I don't know if I was a teacher whether I would be doing that.
No, not my half anything.
But the respect was very much the same, but also I could be biased because I would say I came from a very privileged background in the sense that, you know, my school was very much, I would say it was very much a group of privileged kids.
Yeah.
So it might have been different somewhere else. But I didn't see much change, to be honest.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I felt so different. I mean, I remember sort of feeling more. I think that's when I started feeling anxious about my studies. I think also
I need to care about.
I need to care, and I think. I mean, luckily I was, you know, I was one of those people that I wasn't. I was a natural sort of C/B grade person. There wasn't really anything that I was particularly worried about in GCSEs in the sense that, like, if I don't knuckle down, I will fail. I mean, that's partly because I did art and music, so they're quite coursework.
Things that you liked as well.
Things I liked. I did further maths as well, and I had, you know, again, that's the
same. Over here.
Well, it's the same teacher, so you know, I loved him, and so there was nothing that was sort of properly. I was really scared to fail.
Yeah.
And then I went to A-levels and took maths and further maths, and kind of realised that I loved maths because of the teacher.
You're like, right, I'm out.
And it was the first time, and I did music as well, and that was the exam for that was really hard, and it was the first time where I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to revise 4 hours a day, you know, for like consistently. I'm gonna have to do a timetable. It was the first time where I was like, if you don't knuckle down, you are gonna leave this school with 3 failing grades. And
like immediate consequences, basically.
It was finally I finally felt the consequence of not trying, and I think that was so important for me because otherwise you go through life sort of thinking, oh, I can put 50% effort in and it will be fine.
Yeah.
And I think teaching myself that sort of learning curve of like, actually I need to put 100% into anything to get something out of it changed my life, really.
I mean, I hope so.
Maybe a bit less lazy, if I'm being honest.
To be fair, like, I feel like laziness has its quirks as well.
Of course,
It helps you get things done quicker.
Yeah.
But we're not advocating for laziness.
No.
We're just saying, don't beat yourself over it.
And procrastination looks so different for different people. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll play the piano for 5 minutes and be like, I'm procrastinating, but someone else, they're procrastinating playing the piano with the thing that I'm meant to be procrastinating. So, you know, like, it's all...
It's subjective.
Yeah, completely, yeah.
Cool. Well, for the last thing that we should talk about, something more personal, parents' expectations. How different is it? I mean, obviously we probably can only speak for ourselves, but you know, if you had a general sense of how different it was like, what would you say it was like here?
For my town,
you make it sound like you live in a like place with 10 people and everyone's related, which I'm sure you're not.
but I would say this is a bit of a generalisation, but I think if you went and looked at like a census, I bet the majority of people haven't gone to university. The majority of adults that live there. You know, in my family specifically, my mum went to uni. I had a couple of sort of uncly people that had done, you know, like uncles by 2 or whatever, who had done like university-esque courses, you know, something like a kind of, I don't know, maybe more of a vocational thing than like an actual baccalaureate. But yeah, so I mean, it was just my mum, I think, who had a proper degree, you know what I mean? I think I had the pressure of them seeing me as someone who was going to do that. You know,
was it like told to you, or something you internalized yourself?
I think a bit of both. But then money comes into it, which is, you know, I think at one point when we were looking at how much everything was going to cost and how many loans you get and how many loans you don't get. There was a real moment of, are we actually going to be able to afford to send our daughter to uni? And I think that was stressful for me. And I think it ironically made me want to go more than I would have if I didn't have that thing to sort of fight against, because it was like, it's now or never. You either do it or you don't. It's also an opportunity to move to an exciting new place, you know, when I felt my town was very small and felt, you know, felt limited. I couldn't be contained.
No, I need uncles.
I was at 20,001 population. So I was pretty desperate to go. I think everyone you know, I started reading when I was young, and I think things like that, they just sort of assume you'll go.
Because you started reading?
Yeah, I think from a very young age, you know, if you're interested in anything that's like more than just sports or, you know, anything slightly academic, I think for my generation, the assumption was you'd go. All my friends went. And I think the majority of their parents didn't. I think we felt like the first generation to have all gone, this is what we do.
Congrats.
Yeah, it felt good.
Like, you know,
we all sort of
breaking the glass ceiling, not glass ceiling, breaking the...
I think they all started working very young, so as did we, to be fair. We all worked through uni, which is another thing.
Yeah.
We all had
Topic
jobs.
for another day.
Topic for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I had more of a pressure to try my hardest than to actually succeed in terms of like good grades. If I'd come home with a B, but my parents had known that I'd revised, they would not have been
angry,
upset that I hadn't got an A, which is, you know, very lucky. I'm glad to have that.
Very nurturing.
But if I had come back with a B and hadn't tried at all, they would have said, well, if you tried, you'd have got an A.
Oh, I see.
So it's different. I think it's different for different subjects.
Yeah.
I think they, you know, and then also what you're interested in. It's like, well, if you're interested in it, surely you should be getting A's and things. And it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah.
But, so I think also the education system has changed so much since my parents were around.
True, that's true.
That like, honestly, they didn't know. They didn't really know. And
just working with what the best that
assumptions,
they had.
really.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing for parents to be conscious of, that, you know, probably you've got 20 years between you. 20 years of education changing.
True.
It's massive.
It is. A lot of things will change. Just like the things that they're looking for, the kind of things they're teaching in the subjects. Like,
yeah.
Very, very different.
So did you get lots of pressure from your teacher, Mum?
I must say, my mom, bless her, she was very much not a pressure parent. She was very hands off in the sense where she was like, just do your best, and
That's
you know,
great.
if you can, you know. I think the pressure that I received was very much internalized from people around me in school, students, teachers.
Yeah.
But my mom as a parent was very much like, her expectation was just, you know, do your best. And because she had that expectation, I wanted to do my best.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to make my mom proud. I want to do all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But in terms of a more generalization, outside of my family, I would say parents' expectations in Singapore is a lot more, you need to go to uni.
Yeah.
You need to get to the best school. You need to be the top of your class. I think that's because the way our country works, education is very much at the forefront of everything.
Yeah.
Every plan, every speech that the Prime Minister makes, is education will always be in it. So I think parents' expectations was a big thing for a lot of kids, which although I was lucky not to have, a lot of my friends around me, very much I could see the pressure that their parents put onto them.
Yeah.
You know, which stressed them out a lot because,
like you say, you get it from yourself anyway.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
necessarily need that as well.
Exactly. And like lots of times they would just be like really worried as well. Like if they got maybe a B and they'd be like, oh, my mom's gonna be upset with me.
Yeah.
Even though it's a B, it's really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, parents, they try, most of the time they work best, they try their best to work
They
with
mean
what-
well, don't
they
they?
mean well.
Yeah.
So from their point of view, it's just, you know, they don't want their kids to be sort of
They want
left
all the
behind.
opportunities.
Yeah, but sometimes the way that manifests is very, very unhealthy behaviors of like unnecessary pressure, which obviously I think if you force anyone to try and achieve something, it's always not a good thing.
Yeah.
But if it's natural and from within, it's very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that we've ended up in the same place.
Yeah.
Like, you know, similar job, same company.
Yeah, that's true.
Both
actually.
tutoring and both having such varied experiences
We had so
growing up.
different experiences.
I'm bullying my teachers, you're respecting them.
Natalie, our teacher's watching this right now, so I know where to find you. I know where to find it, Natalie. You make me cry. Wow, Natalie.
Oh, I apologise to all the teachers.
You better apology video right now.
This is our YouTube apology video. Oh
But
gosh.
it's true actually. We've ended up in the same place, basically
Yeah.
doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And our experiences were so different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Nature versus nurture.
I think if that says anything, is that, you know,
You are who you are.
You are who you are and dream big. You
Yeah.
never know where you're going to end up. Like,
Cheers to
cheers to that. Very glad that you're my co-worker
And
and
me.
friend. Glad I'm here.
Yes, and me.
Cool.
Thank you so much for listening, guys.
Yeah, thank you for
Should
listening.
we clap?
Stay tuned.
Learning unplugged, learning unplugged, learning unplugged, learning unplugged. Woo!